Okay, awesome. Well, it's so nice to be with you. I think the only part of my intro that I would have added is that I am a carless Detroiter, meaning that I use my bike to get everywhere. So sometimes I feel like I have to kind of hold up my bike membership card to let you guys know I'm the real deal. I'm legit. So I have had my fair share of close calls here in Detroit, as you all can imagine. Is there anybody else here from Detroit? Okay, no, I will try to represent Detroit the best I can, being a fairly new Detroiter. So we are here today to talk about the growing size of commercial vehicles on the road. And like I said, I have some experience with this in Detroit, both working on the problem, but also being a near victim of the problem. So I'm really excited to have with me today Alex Epstein from the Volpe Center at the U.S. Department of Transportation and Kelsey Porter from ABinBev, representing both the public sector and the private sector. So I will start with Kelsey for an intro. And Kelsey, if you will tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into this work, that would be amazing. And then we'll go to Alex.
Sure. Thank you so much, Alex. So as she mentioned, my name's Kelsey Porter. I'm the Global Director of Safety for Logistics and Commercials for ABinBev. And for those of you who are not maybe familiar, ABinBev is the world's largest brewer, and we operate all over the globe. And my job is to ensure that we are keeping our team members and the communities safe when we're delivering our products. So as to how I came into this role, I'm a safety professional by trade. I've been working in various industries for my entire career. And when I joined ABI, I became focused in logistics. And so this was a huge thing to pick up and learn about, not just the risks as they pertain to the folks that we have driving our vehicles and our team members, but also how we can keep our communities safe. I've been doing this for about 2 years at the global level with ABI, 7 years total. And with that, I'll turn it over to the other Alex.
Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you, Alex. I'm Alex Epstein at the U.S. DOT Volpe Center. We're a federal research lab within the U.S. Department of Transportation. So hello to all my colleagues there from the other modes. We're based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Actually, your previous speaker there, Darren, I believe we're neighbors, not next door, but nearby. And so it's a small world. I work on making vehicles safer and more sustainable. My background is in engineering, and I'm committed to vulnerable road user safety in particular in the design and technologies that we prioritize for the vehicles on the road, given that that's an important part of the safe system approach. We have safer roads, safer people, also safer vehicles. And so I'm excited that this panel here offers an opportunity for us to focus on that element of the safe system approach of how we drive fatalities down towards zero. And I'll speak a little bit more once, deferring back to you, Alex, other Alex, about one particular aspect of vehicle design that presents a significant opportunity for safer, vulnerable road user oriented design.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Kelsey. So one of the really exciting things that the three of us have been working on this year is looking at the issue of direct vision. Can I get a show of hands for anybody who's familiar with the term direct vision, so I know where to start? Okay, good. We have some good no head shaking. Awesome. So Alex and Kelsey, let's start there by defining what direct vision is.
Alex, I think I'm going to let you take that as the industry expert.
Sure thing. Direct vision is what the driver of a vehicle can see directly with their naked eye outside the vehicle. In other words, what the driver can see surrounding the vehicle through the windows. This is important for situational awareness before moving the vehicle. It's also important for being able to establish eye contact. What do your children get taught at any safe routes to school training? Make eye contact with the driver, wave. If they can't do that, the design of the vehicle precludes that basic foundational element of interacting safely on our streets. So, and this is in contrast to indirect vision, which is seeing someone as a driver through a mirror or one of the increasing number of camera displays in vehicles today.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. So I wanted to get everybody on the same page so that we have a shared language when we're talking about this topic. So about a year ago, Together for Safer Roads started working on creating a rating system that would allow commercial fleet operators to determine how safe their vehicles were in terms of direct vision. So if you can imagine a scorecard with a scale from 1 star to 5 stars, we have developed the first American rating system for direct vision as of about 5 weeks ago, which is really exciting. So I want to give Alex Epstein an opportunity to talk a little bit more about that, but he also has some really interesting slides that will sort of help bring direct vision to life in terms of what it looks like for you as a cyclist, for you as a pedestrian, and generally for you as a vulnerable road user. So we'll start with that, and then we'll go to Kelsey, because I'd really love for Kelsey to share her perspective on why this matters to the private sector. You know, I think as cyclists, we can show up with a lot of justified anger about how difficult it is to share the road. And not only is it hard to navigate large non-commercial vehicles, but when we think about being sideswiped by a city bus or having a close call with a semi truck that's turning a corner, these are things that happen on the road every day. So from Kelsey's point of view, it's really important for us to understand why this matters to the private sector and why they're investing in this issue. So let's go back to Alex. Alex, will you share us a little bit more about why this issue matters and sort of bring it to life for us?
Yeah, I think in this might be a case where a picture might be worth many words. So I may go ahead and transition over, share a couple of slides, and just talk through them here. One moment. Let me know if that's going to work.
Looks great. Carry on.
And here we go. Is that still working?
Yep, looks good.
Thank you. All right. So this is actually both Eric and Englin. I don't know if you want to wave over there in the room. So both he and I are presenting this. But for simplicity, I'll walk through this, and Eric's available there for for enhanced Q&A in real life. First, a quick disclaimer. This is disseminated in the interest of info exchange. We're not representing anything more than best technical judgment, such as statements of policy or guidance. So I just want to be clear about that. I am a US DOT federal employee. Having said that, there's a problem. These are visual representations of problem statements, whether they pertain to pickup trucks or commercial vehicles. So briefly, what is the scope of the problem as best we know it? I'll say a little bit about that. So Alex, you were just saying, so why does this matter? And then I'll introduce a couple of tools and a couple of quick findings from some of the work we're doing as far as direct vision rating systems or ways to define safer vehicles, just to share that. And Alex, feel free to bring the conversation back at any point. But in terms of showing, what does the driver see? And these are two just different European commercial vehicles showing the same vulnerable road users, the same person standing, person on a bike, person on a motorcycle next to two different trucks. Maybe some of you have already seen this. This is the basis for what's called the direct vision standard in London, and is now an international standard across Europe and Japan. How do we bring that to the United States? Well, first of all, we need to know what the level the issue is. Available data that we have found suggests there are at least 500 fatalities a year, at least 15,000 injuries a year related to these types of blind zone related crashes. And the private sector on the truck maker, car maker side is well aware of this. They have this type of information available that they produce and keep in house. It's generally not accessible to the public. Here's an example from one truck maker, for example, showing that the driver of that particular work truck cannot see most of the intersection. as you can see, those purple visibility sheets extending out, that's the nearest point on the ground that the driver can see. And that's just the design of the vehicle. Does it have to be designed that way? No. And to be able to discern this, we've taken on a project over the last few years to make the public able to understand what are the blind zones of different vehicles without having to necessarily arrange 12 children in front of an Escalade and then ask the last one to raise their hand. And the tool is still in development. It's not perfect, but for the first time, what it lets you do is take a picture from the inside of the vehicle, enter some measurements, and get outputs like this. For example, showing how many adults cannot be seen. 44 adults for this vehicle is the estimate. And be able to compare this to other vehicles. And just to put a finer point on it, there's the surface of the road is the black area in front of that truck that can't be seen and extends roughly 30 feet out. And what are those, white dots? They're elementary school children that if you lined up them, you're not going to do this in real life. Take 176 elementary school children and line them up. Although this has been done for some publicity, some public safety campaigns I have seen, but it takes a great deal of effort. And here you can virtually do that and count up how many vulnerable road users cannot be seen. This is a live website, which, by the way, Eric, do you want to say, a little bit about the website analytics? I don't know if you're in a good position to be heard.
Can you hear me over there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just, as part of the website, this is a live website. So we do want to know who is using it and what type of impact are we using. Just, we're putting things out there. Is it actually reaching people? So we are tracking that. And, in September, we had a great conference at NACTO where we talked to quite a few folks about the website, a lot of traffic coming there, but just want to throw it out there. We can see where people are coming from to reach the site, and bikeleague.org showing up as quite a top contributor. So clearly people are worried about just how many bicyclists can be fitting in these blind zones and how far away from a vehicle you would have to be before the driver can actually see you. And it's not good for an adult bicyclist. It's really not good for an elementary school child on a bicycle. So definitely glad to be able to use this to see what's resonating with people and what people are interested in.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. That was as of this morning. So, and as I said, we're still working on this, but we did just get a paper published showing basically this website does work. This app does work. There's some amount of error, but if you painstakingly measure how far out from a vehicle the driver can see, and then you use the app, it's relatively close. That's the point to take away from the red dots being fairly close to the blue dots in that picture on the right. And we've actually been applying an even simpler method with the city of Boston. Very exciting. First city in the United States that's contemplating a direct vision standard or rating as part of its procurement of new vehicles and part of a requirement for contractors. There have been multiple fatalities on Boston streets involving large trucks, often with people biking. And we're taking potentially an even simpler approach. This is something you don't even need necessarily the app for, but you really just need 2 cones, and you measure how far in each direction they can be seen. So this is an even simpler approach we can talk about momentarily if helpful. And the next slides are just I don't necessarily want you to feel like you need to read them, but this is a preview of our collaboration with the city of Boston. Being a federal partner, we can bring this to them as a local partner looking to implement a direct vision program, first one potentially in the United States. We took this approach and we measured 21 different vehicles in their city fleet, and the results are really interesting when we map them to a crosswalk and assume that a truck stops at a crosswalk. So this is 21 different vehicles, starting from school buses at the top to pickups in the middle, and some medium duty trucks, and then some heavy work trucks near the bottom. And if you can imagine, each of these is a vehicle stopped at a stop line, and the stop line is 4 feet before a crosswalk, and the crosswalk is 6 feet deep. So those are the minimum dimensions in the MUTCD for those pavement markings. And now you look at each of those the dark blue lines, so the dark blue bars. That's how far out a child has to be, an elementary school child, before the driver can see them. For some of these vehicles, they're not visible anywhere in the crosswalk. That's why those bars at the bottom extend all the way out here. The light blue bars are adults. How far out can the driver see an adult in each of these vehicles? And again, in some of them, even an adult cannot be seen in about 2/3 of the crosswalk. If we're thinking about what's good and bad, one way to segment that is a child visible anywhere in the crosswalk, and then start to translate that into what is consistent with the safety goals of the city of Boston or a different jurisdiction that's considering a policy around direct vision. The same can be done, and we've done it now for a bike lane. Consider a buffered bike lane. And in Boston, the typical geometry, according to the Transportation Department, is a 2-foot buffer, 5-foot bike lane. So 7 total plus, on average, about 1 foot of travel lane. Now you have 1 foot of travel lane for an 8-foot truck and an 8.5-foot truck in a 10.5-foot travel lane, 2-foot buffer, 5-foot bike lane. If we were to use that child distance, how far into the bike lane can the driver see a child on a bike? Actually, most of these don't even make the cut. So this is an active discussion right now. Do we go with, for example, is it more useful to see where the child can be seen, which is almost none of the vehicles except the school buses, which have a full height door on the side, as you know, a full height glass door. Or do we go with the adults? And if we went with the adults, it would look like this. In terms of segmenting, is an adult visible anywhere in this bike lane to the driver if they're riding alongside the truck or other vehicle? So this is something, and I bike everywhere as well. So this is something I experience firsthand. It's very difficult to make eye contact with the truck driver in a large truck if you're anywhere abreast of the truck.
Alex, I think this is a great point to pause, if that's okay with you,
Yep,
because I think
so.
this is so powerful in bringing the issue to life. And my hope is that you all have sort of now made the mental connection between what a driver sees from a commercial vehicle, what we mean by direct vision, and what the implication is for a child or an adult on foot or on a bike. So Kelsey, I'm curious from your perspective as somebody who thinks about safety as a full-time job from the private sector. One, I'm wondering, do you see any of your vehicles in these, some visible or not visible at all? And two, if you do, how are you thinking about this, and what does it mean to ABinBev to invest in an issue like this?
Sure. So thanks, Alex. For us, from a safety perspective, we have a big opportunity here because, as Alex mentioned, we have vehicles that are in the red area in both the bike lane as well as the crosswalk. And I think one thing that I will highlight, which is of importance to me in particular, is that my focus is not just on the United States, but looks at our global footprint. And when we compare with infrastructures in other countries, things like crosswalks and bike lanes are not necessarily present. So direct vision becomes even more critical in our roadmap for safety because we often cannot rely on infrastructure to allow for buffer zones or other protections. And when we think about where we're going from a safety perspective, our goal is incredibly simple. We will eliminate fatal accidents as they relate to our operations. And we look at fatalities as they pertain to our employees and also the members of the community. And none of them are even remotely acceptable. And we will do everything we can to find the right technologies and the path forward to make sure that we are eliminating them. And further than that, I think one thing I'll call out as something that I see as our role is related to the fact that we're a big company and we buy a lot of trucks. And if we start buying the right trucks and we can make sure that our partners and the other companies that we work with and benchmark with also buy the right trucks, we can start to change what trucks are sold so that it's not just us that buy trucks with direct vision, but that direct vision becomes much more common across all commercial fleets. More so when we sell a truck and it's reached a later stage of its life for us, someone will buy that truck and then they will have a truck that has direct vision. So there is a lot of cascading effect here. And I think one final thing that occurs to me is our opportunity is that we want to change the way that vision is approached in vehicles, and we want to change them for commercial vehicles and also for passenger vehicles. But if you think about it, a direct vision vehicle for a passenger vehicle kind of seems a little space agey, like you'd never see one on a road. We have no idea what that would even look like. But if we can make commercial vehicles look that way, people will get very used to that style of cab. We can make it commonplace. We can make it accepted. And people then will be much more likely to accept that their passenger vehicle changes to look a little bit more like something they've seen all the time for years in commercial trucks. So this is the role that I see for the private sector, and one that I'm really proud to be a part of in working on this standard, because with the knowledge of what this standard should be, we can turn to our existing fleet, we can make improvements, small improvements, mostly related to indirect vision, but we can also plot the path forward to replacing our fleet with the trucks that do have the direct vision requirements that we need.
Thanks, Kelsey. I hope you guys caught, I think what was the most powerful point that Kelsey made is that essentially ABinBev is voting with their feet and they're voting with their dollars. And what I mean by that is when a company that large makes the choice to purchase direct vision vehicles or vehicles that meet a 3 or 4 or 5-star rating, it begins to trickle down in the market. Number one, like Kelsey said, we get used to seeing this style of truck on the road. If any of you have traveled in Europe or traveled in Asia, you've probably seen a much larger presence of direct vision vehicles than we have here in the US. So that's what we're trying to get to. And then the second thing that Kelsey mentioned is that once ABinBev is maybe finished with their truck, it's going to get sold again. It's not like, it immediately goes to a scrapyard or a dump. And so when ABinBev makes a choice to purchase direct vision vehicles and high quality vehicles, it then gets sold to smaller companies who are having safer vehicles in their own fleets. So Kelsey, thanks so much for that. I want to take a couple of questions now. Typically, I think you all have probably experienced in most panels today, saving the questions until the end. My expertise is in human-centered design, and so that means that the humans lead the conversation, and we want to know what's meaningful to you all, and we want to know what's valuable to you all. And so pausing here for questions and letting you sort of shape the panel is our aim for today, or my aim for today. So the first question is from Alan, and he says, I noticed that some auto manufacturers, such as Toyota, have been implementing various pedestrian and bicycle detection in their crash detection, blind spot monitoring, and backup camera apps. Comments on the effectiveness of that and whether such systems are being added to trucks and other large vehicles. So Kelsey or Alex, maybe you can address this and how that technology is being integrated into commercial vehicles.
Alex, maybe you go first because you may have more of a broader look.
I'll take a crack at it. It's a good question. There's a universe of technologies that are being incorporated. They're not always incorporated standard. They may be incorporated at certain trim levels of vehicles, and they may be bundled with luxury items like moonroofs. Yes, so there's certainly promise as well as questions about some of the technologies. Pedestrian automatic emergency braking, for example, very promising. At the same time, variable effectiveness at night for systems that depend on cameras, because cameras can't see the same way that our eyes can't see at night if there's low light conditions. So I think it's just understanding all the different limitations as well as opportunities of the different systems. Any kind of system that's based on a camera is generally going to have more of a lag in terms of the human response time. That was the outcome of research that was behind the direct vision movement, first in London and now, you know, at the United Nations level for vehicles. Is people when they drive, they'll respond about 50% faster to seeing something with the naked eye than if there's picking something up on a mirror or a camera display. And that 1 second or 0.7 second difference can be the difference between a fatal crash or not, between life and death. Especially as as Kelsey was saying, in close quarters environments where there might not be the buffers from infrastructure even in place to begin with. There's also no reason not to think of it as and rather than or. That's something we're currently in the process of studying. We're looking at bird's eye view cameras. So that's where instead of having multiple camera displays, they're all merged into one, and it's a top-down view for the driver. It's possible that will have further benefits on top of direct vision. We don't necessarily expect it would have be a one-to-one replacement, but it could be an extra layer, especially when parking the vehicle, for example, not backing over anyone, or or potentially when making turns. And with direct vision, you can only look over your shoulders so far until, especially in a truck, there's a certain point at which you cannot look back. And that might be a case where something like a bird's eye view camera may have additional benefit.
Great, thanks, Alex. Kelsey, along the same lines, Tim asked a really important question in the chat, which is, how do we retrofit? I mean, I think we all have to acknowledge that not every company, not any company is going to go out and purchase an entirely new fleet based on this rating system. And there's going to be a lot more investment that we're going to see in retrofitting. So what does that look like in terms of direct vision, Kelsey, for ABinBev?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, and unfortunately, it's a complex question. And I'll start by just saying that one thing I think is really critical is that we are putting pressure on our manufacturers to be bringing these solutions for direct vision and also for these indirect safety systems onto commercial vehicles, because without that pressure from industry, they are not going to do it. And I'll highlight just one thing, which is that airbags are not standard in commercial vehicles. And there is evidence to suggest that airbags have lots of great benefits in different configurations in a commercial vehicle, and yet we still struggle with our manufacturers to make sure that they are being incorporated. This is an example that I use because the great technology that is being designed for passenger vehicles is not going to come into a commercial truck until we know how to ask for it, and that we demand it, and we prioritize it, and we work in concert to make sure that we change the industry so that it is present on these vehicles. And then I'll switch and talk a little bit about retrofitting, because unfortunately it's not very easy and it depends a lot on the trucks themselves. So one thing to keep in mind is that much of this technology is very advanced. It works with an onboard computer system and ties into various sensors that would be present on the truck. Depending on the age of the vehicle, this is just not going to be something that is going to be viable. Now, that said, I think an important thing for us to focus on are ways that we can standardize pieces of technology which are low tech and are present on all trucks. And so in this way, for older vehicles, we have opportunities to help standardize how mirrors are installed, what mirrors are used, how they are adjusted, etc. For these middle-term trucks that do have the ability to have higher levels of technology installed, we definitely have an opportunity there. But one thing I'll just kind of give over to the group here is that when we think of commercial fleet, it can be a lot more complicated than the idea of installing something on a personal vehicle, because in many applications, you have to think of the tractor itself and the trailer as two different vehicles. And in most applications, they will mix and match throughout their use. So you may have a trailer that goes from one location to another, gets left there for some period of time, and then is picked up by a different tractor later. When we think about how that technology can then work together, we have to have a network that is able to be integrated and switched between these pairings. This, of course, is a complex issue and one that the industry has not responded to so well yet with technology that is plug and play ready to do it. That doesn't mean that it's not possible, but it does mean that we have to develop standards and then ask for it and demand that it be created for us.
Kelsey, that is such helpful insight. Thanks for sharing that. There was a question that jumped out at me, and it's, how do the drivers feel about direct vision? Do they feel less safe with less metal between them and what's on the road? And it jumped out at me because I did some ride-alongs last summer with the New York City Fleet vehicles, and rode with a really wonderful asphalt hauler who's based out of Queens, and then also rode with Republic Services in Boston through the North End. And if any of you have been to the North End of Boston or are familiar with that area, it is really narrow roads. And so when you try to take a full-size garbage truck through there, it's pretty tricky. And it gave me an appreciation for what things look like from the driver's point of view. So Alex, do you have any sort of initial anecdotal evidence around how receptive drivers are to a direct vision vehicle that maybe puts a little less cab between them and vulnerable road users?
Well, I think it's important to not conflate a high vision cab with necessarily a cab over. All the trucks in Europe are cab over, basically all of them, in Japan and a lot of the world.
And can you describe what a cab over is, maybe for those who aren't familiar?
So a flat front vehicle, the driver sits either atop of or forward of the engine instead of the engine sticking out in front, with a long, variably long hood. If you think about a school bus is actually a fairly high vision vehicle, including the ones where the engine is in front of the driver, and that's because it's supposed to let the driver see small people around the bus. And so it is designed purposely to have a hood that is low and that slopes down. And you'll notice some school buses even have an arm that swings out in front. It's called a crossing control arm. And according to our measurements, we confirm that is a long enough arm. It's only about 7 feet wide. Sticks out in front, and more or less any child will be visible in front of that arm to the driver. So it is possible to design a high vision vehicle with a sufficiently sloped hood. If you think of a Tesla Semi, we've never gotten our hands on one, but that might be a bit of an ideal case almost, because no one can step directly in front of the vehicle, but the hood is so sloped that it doesn't block the driver's view of the ground. Directly in front of the vehicle, that is, which means there can still be material in front, and that's actually the direction Europe is going. It's called the enhanced truck front end design, and that's really where their head is, toward a rounded nose. So not a completely brick wall flat front necessarily, but also not a long snout like you might see on some longer Peterbilts, Kenworth, some over the road vehicles that then do drive into the city occasionally, are taken into the city. And those can have really long front blind zones. So it's on this. I think it's a bit of back to your question, Alex. I think it's a false choice.
Yeah,
and even for the kind of brick wall cab over designs, the safety data from NHTSA that is out there shows that the gap between driver fatality rates, so basically the risk to the driver in a cab over, is not statistically that different from the fatality rate in a conventional truck where the engine sticks out in front. At least not in the 2000s, 2010s.
I am
Maybe a
never
myth
ceased
from
to be
an earlier
amazed.
era.
Yeah, Alex Epstein is the king of having these facts in his brain and able to be called up at any point in time. It's truly incredible. Kelsey, you wanted to add on to that. Go ahead.
Well, I wasn't going to bring any facts, but I was going to anecdotally add some color to Alex's information and just share that we have recently begun incorporating electric trucks into our fleet into the United States. And this was a big concern. We heard a lot of pushback from our teams when we started to source our vehicles that nobody was going to want to drive those trucks, that they were going to be afraid of the cab over design. There was all this anticipatory pushback. But then we got the trucks and it turns out that everybody just decided to drive them, and we've had no issues with them. So I think that what we learned there, and I'll share one other quick anecdote about the Direct Vision Summit that we had. We had a number of drivers of commercial vehicles come to the summit with us, and one of them was one of my drivers from one of my facilities, and he spent the whole time talking about how passionate he was about doing anything that he could in order to make people safer on the roads that he drives on. Now, he's one driver. He can't speak for everyone, but we didn't pick him because he had a specific agenda. We picked him because he was available that day. So I think does, in a way, speak for the sentiment of commercial drivers, which is two things. One, they'll drive the truck you give them, and they want to keep people safe. So if we have those trucks available, they, I think, will respond in a really positive way to having direct vision.
That's great. Thanks, Kelsey. Brent, I hope that answered your question about solutions for those blind spots on the front window pillars. So thank you guys so much for the questions. We are just short of 5 minutes here. So I wanted to close us with some hopeful optimism. So Alex is going to share a little bit about the new Republic Services truck. They've got a high vision truck that has just hit the road that we're really excited about. So Alex will give you a quick synopsis of that, and then we will leave you with a call to action. So Alex, over to you.
Sure. Thank you. I was just recalling that Transport for London also did these driver trials, and they put drivers who were skeptical of high vision cab designs, and this is especially where they sit down lower and there's more glass in front, and they're saying, I think I'm going to hate it. And then one of the testimonials that I'll never forget reading was it was very British too. So just it pains me to say this, but I actually really would never drive a different lorry again. So so there is a butts and seat factor, and I think Kelsey hit that on the spot. Yeah, so in terms of just being able to do this, ABI is a large company. There's another large company that was part of that summit that Alex mentioned, Republic Services, and it was really exciting to see just shortly after that summit. There's a press release that they put out. Let me go ahead and put that in the chat. That's a link to the vehicle that they've gotten they announced a new large contract for these new garbage trucks, and one, they're electric, so great for emissions and noise. Two, they're high vision. It looks like they might be a bespoke design. It's large customer, and Oshkosh is the company that's going to be making them, but in my conversations with Republic Services, they're pretty clear. This is a message to the industry, and large companies like ABI and Republic Services can then kind of point to the legacy player, say to the legacy players and point to this, saying, look, we want more of this. We want more vehicles like this if you want to do business with us. So I think there's an avenue, and I think the tide may be turning in terms of awareness of this, of direct vision as an issue in the safe system approach. And there's a really exciting private sector role for playing a leadership, being the leaders really on this as we move forward. So
great. Thanks so much, Alex. Thanks, Kelsey. We want to give a special thanks to our partners Together for Safer Roads. They are an incredible organization that is getting ready to launch. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this yet, but I'm going to, if you guys promise not to tell. They're going to be launching a Safer Roads studio that is completely dedicated to improving road safety for vulnerable road users, that will invite stakeholders from the public sector and the private sector to come into a lab environment and solve these problems. So I would encourage you guys to go check out Together for Safer Roads. And the other thing that you can do is, if you are interested, if you are a fleet operator, if you are a fleet owner, if you know someone who's a fleet owner and is interested in testing out this new rating system that we're deploying, please follow up with Karen or Connor, or if you're in the room, you can even find Eric and let him know. So with that, we have been ABinBev, the Volpe Center at the U.S. Department of Transportation, Together for Safer Roads, and Cities Reimagined. And we thank you guys so much for the time, and stay safe out there on the roads.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
thank you so much to all of our presenters and everyone who's here. I also want to just have you look at the chat where I think Alex put in the link to the Volpe app for blind zones, where you can measure the blind zones in personal vehicles as well as commercial. So yeah, thank you all for being here.
Can you put the link to the app from the chat and the Volpe?
Yeah, we'll put the link in the Hoover app so everyone can have it. And for the folks here, we even have Eric who can help you right now. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.